was raised Catholic. My mum was Irish Catholic, and my parents married at a time when the Catholic Church insisted that Catholic children be raised Catholic. So my father's Anglican, but he consented. And so it was really a beautiful faith tradition. I love the Mass, I love the liturgy and the rituals, and when I go home to England, actually, I will go to Catholic Mass because those roots need to be watered. But I think, and I wasn't really looking for another faith. I was quite content and happy where I was. But I spent my gap year in Germany, and I met a woman there. She's very lovely, and I was going through sort of a faith crisis myself, really. I'd finished school and didn't know what to do with the rest of my life. I was going to be reading German at the University of Wales, but then what? You know, it's like these big questions I was being absorbed by at the time. So we talked about God, and I found her ideas interesting, and she invited me to church one day, and I thought, sure, you know, I'll go. You know, I had no discomfort. I had no fear of being pulled over into another tradition. I was quite happy in my own. But it was quite extraordinary as we stepped over the threshold into the room in which the meeting was going to be held. This was on the second floor of a building in Wiesbaden. I felt something that I'd never felt before. And I suppose some background. The Catholic Church was becoming a little more ecumenical and, you know, evangelical in a way. And so we would have, in our language, we'd call them testimony meetings. And I went to them because they were always off school. I was in boarding school. I think that's the only reason any of us went, because it got us out to the school grounds somewhere else. And but people would, you know, we'd have something to eat and then sit in a circle. And then really it was like a testimony meeting. People would stand up and say something they believed that they found really beautiful. And I never had anything to say, which really didn't bother me that much until one day. I think I was the only one who hadn't said anything. So I felt obligated to stand. And I was so embarrassed. It's one of those things about which I'm ashamed, because I went on about a belief that I really didn't have and didn't feel, and, you know, felt stark naked in front of the lights as a fraud. So, so this was different. So when this is something I think I should have felt in this meeting, but didn't. You know, the missionaries came over, and it was really quite a Pentecostal experience, I should say. It was lots of fire and light, and I don't think we had discussions. We just talked, and but the spirit was really there in a way I'd never experienced before in my life.
Wow.
And so and I felt joy, and I felt this was beautiful, and I thought my parents would be overjoyed and ecstatic when they heard that I wanted to become a Mormon. Well, just the reverse happened. I remember calling my mum, and her response was, "What? Brigham Young and all those wives?" And of course, Brigham Young and all those wives aren't part of the discussion, so that was news to me. And anyway, it was obvious that this was something my parents were really alarmed about. And so I remember going home and talking to them, and it was really quite awful, actually. I realized that I would lose my family if I did this. And so my baptismal date was set, and you know, the missionaries were there when I got off the plane, and I said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this to my family." So I hung about for about 6 months, and then I couldn't deny the testimonies that had been borne to me by the Spirit. And so it's Shakespeare, he always comes to the rescue, you know, to thine own self thou must be true. And so I wrote them all letters and told them I was joining. But the principal reason for my joining the church was Christ. This worried me a little bit as I was growing up Catholic. It was very, very beautiful, but where was Christ? I mean, he was very visible when you entered the church. But quite honestly, I felt that he was obscured by a myriad of saints, and particularly his mother. And I felt in Mormonism that Christ had more of a central place.
Mm.
And I think that's the one thing that really helped me move.